Yellow Shelton Shenanigan fam. I won't talk like that the whole time. We are back to read chapter 12. Not sure which way was correct for y'all, so we're just going to roll with it. These intros are getting even more interesting by the day because I have been cooped up for a while. Okay, so on the agenda, we are going to read the questions because I always almost forget. We're going to read the questions. We're going to read the chapter, review those questions one more time. I'm going to do my shout outs, and I think that's it. Wait till the very end to see if you are one of the kiddos on the shout out. And also to give your opinion on what book I might possibly be reading next on after we finish this book. So even after we finish reading The Woods Runner this summer, I'm going to be, I obviously have a large, this way, collection of books here that I got from my classroom, and I'm going to get even more books from my classroom whenever I'm allowed to go back in it. That's some tea. Anyways, and so yeah, stick around to the very end of the video. Do not fast forward because I can tell when you're just fast forwarding. It tells me. Good try. Okay. Going on to the questions. So for chapter 12, 5 easy schmeezy questions. We've got number 1, what did Annie do for 3 days? That might also be some tea. Number 2, what was Samuel raging? Number 3, how did they travel? And number 4, what did they eat? And number 5, how old did Samuel think that Annie was? So we are moving on to chapter 12. This is a pretty short chapter, not nearly as long as chapter 11, so just keep all those in mind as we are reading. Chapter 12. He found Annie huddled in some hazel bushes, crying. When she saw him, she ran and threw herself at him, grabbing the edge of his shirt, silent except for the soft sobbing, for 3 days. Unless she was asleep or tending to herself, she would not get more than 4 feet away from him for 3 solid days. She held on to his clothing and did not say a word in all that time. At night, he would wrap her in his blanket and sit away from the glow of the fire and doze, and she would cry in her sleep almost all night. It bothered him that she had no shoes or moccasins, and he had no leather to make a pair for her, but her bare feet were amazingly tough, and she kept up with his rapid pace much better than he would have expected. So remember, her parents were killed when the Germans or the Hessians came through, and remember her dad was Caleb, and it was Caleb and Ma, and they came through and kind of like ransacked their house. They burned everything down. That was in the last chapter that you hopefully already have listened to. So it says that she wouldn't really leave his side. She just kind of like held on to his shirt because she was so sad. And she didn't have any shoes, but she was keeping up just fine. This is Annie, in case you forgot. They drank from creeks, which were common, and shared the small amount of food that Ma had given him. Annie did not eat for the first 3 days, and he worried at that, although she drank, but in the evening of the 3rd day, she did take some food and seemed to come out of the cloud that she was in, little by little. He was having a very difficult time with almost everything. The jolt from what his life had been just short weeks ago to what it was now had been so sudden, the gulf so vast, that he was in a completely different world, it seemed, one dominated by violence and insanity. The woods were the one thing he knew and still believed. Left that for me. The woods were the one thing he knew and still believed in. He was thankful for the haven of the forest as they traveled. Still, his rage would not go away. He stifled it, but he seethed with anger every time he thought of the Hessians and how they had killed the Clarks, of how they had tried to kill Annie, of how the raiders had slaughtered the peaceful settlers for no reason. He wanted to punish them, make them pay for what they had done, and could think of nothing to do except act as insane and violent as they had. Kill someone, find someone in a red coat and just shoot him. He knew that it was not something he could do, even though he thought of it. And so he drove himself and, unfortunately, Annie in a forced march that covered over 15 miles a day. It would not have been so hard, except that the trail had become a proper road. There was still forest on either side, but settlements, then small towns, appeared regularly. They often saw local people or detachments of redcoats marching on the road. They avoided everybody. Samuel trusted no one, not even the people who might have been friendly. Annie complained only once. "We jump into the woods every time we see somebody," she said. "That can't be all bad. That can't all..." We're struggling today, y'all. It's a Monday. "They can't all be bad." "Yes," Samuel said, thinking of the Hessians, "they can. Every single one of them can be bad. So we hide. And that's it." His voice had an edge that kept her from arguing. He didn't try to sound angry, but he thinks that's how it came out. They worked around settlements and small towns, sticking to the trees, and on day 5, they'd been out of food for almost a day and a half. Samuel shot a deer and took an afternoon, well back in the woods, to make a small fire with flint and steel and a little powder. He took the 2 back legs of the deer with the stakes holding them over the fire, and, when the meat was still rare, cut pieces from one of the legs. They ate it and squatted by the fire. He also cut off the strips of meat alongside the lower backbone, the tenderloin. Although it was quite small, he cooked that as well to save for later. They ate a whole back leg sitting there until Annie's face was coated with grease. They wrapped up the excess in the cloth Ma had given them and were up and moving again, Samuel not wanting to waste daylight. He could think of little but finding his parents and getting them away from their captors. But he also realized that the odds were not good, definitely not in his favor. He knew nothing about cities or even little towns, but New York City must be large and filled with people who would not be helpful since the British were there. Try as he might, he couldn't think of a way to get into the city safely to find his mother and father. With meat in his belly, he fairly lopped along, so fast that at last Annie gasped, "You've got to slow down. I can't run like a deer, Samuel." He slowed, but kept the pace steady, so that when it was dark, hard dark, and he stopped, Annie fell asleep almost the instant he wrapped the bedroll blanket around her. He decided to make a cold camp and didn't start a fire. Since there was no smoke, the bugs, mostly mosquitoes, found him at once. They weren't as bad as they'd been on his hunting trips on the frontier, but then he'd always had a fire with the smoke to keep them away. He was tired, although not like Annie. He had some thinking to do. It took him a while to get his mind off of the mosquitoes, and by that time there was a new sliver of moon. In the pale silver light, he saw Annie's face, wrapped in the blanket, just showing enough of her to let her breathe, and his heart went out to her. She was only 8, he thought, maybe 9, and her whole world had just been absolutely destroyed. Were there many like her? Everything gone because of this war? The innocent ones were the worst part of it all. His mother and father making a life on the frontier, just wanting to be left alone. His mother trying to get to the garden to grow. His father learning how to use tools, how to make his own house, wanting only to work and read and think and live a quiet, simple life with his family. All gone. His own life gutted, but not as much as Annie's, but enough. He had to get his parents back. How? What to do? There were so many unknown factors that the question seemed impossible. He was the only one with a rifle. Oh yes, he thought, smiling grimly, and a knife. And he felt that the entire world he was heading into was against him. He would have to get around them, the people in that world, some way, somehow. But how? His eyes closed, open again, closed again, his questions spiraling down as he leaned back against the tree and fell asleep. Okay. So that's good that he found Annie. Okay, so it says, for the questions, number 1, what did Annie do for 3 days? That was at the very beginning of the chapter. So if you don't ever remember these questions, remember, just rewind, because it's in there somewhere. Number 2, why was Samuel raging? Number 3, how did they travel? Number 4, what did they eat? And number 5, how old did Samuel think that Annie was? Okay. Now let's move on to our shout outs. So in my room, I think I'm going to do a shout out a day here. I want to shout out Latrey Wilkes. He has been getting all of his work done. He has been getting, I mean, when I tell you getting it done quickly, but not rushing through it, he's just been making sure that he is using his time super wisely. I also want to shout out DeMarshawn Lowe. He has also been making sure that he gets all of his work done, and always, both of them are really good about asking questions if they have questions. So y'all give each other pats on the back, virtually, of course, and comment down below once you see your shout out. From Miss Savage's room, let's see here. I want to shout out Phoenix Crenshaw Mack. He has made sure to get all of his work done. He's working super, super, super hard. I also want to shout out Sky Spencer. So both of you give yourselves pats on the back. Be sure to show this part to your parents so that they can be super duper proud of you as well. Because both of you have been working so, so hard. From Mr. Baker's class, I want to shout out Maya Walker. Yeah, I mean, girl, been getting all your work done. So be sure to show mom and dad and sister and grandma and everybody and tell them how proud I am. And one more. And Kaya Holloway. So she got signed on and got all of that work done lickety split fast. So shout out to you, Kaya. She's also been making sure that she's been following all the directions. When it says comment, she comments. When it says do this first, she does that first. I mean, just spectacular job getting all caught up. I'm super duper proud of you. So last thing I want to do real quick is start giving y'all some ideas about what books we can maybe read next. Also, for any kiddos that want to keep up, like I said, I'm still going to be doing some read alouds during the summer. I'm going to go ahead and probably get them recorded before summer and schedule them out. So if y'all have any requests from books that I have, I'll try and grab those while I'm in the classroom next, whenever that is. I've got a lot of Black Lagoon. I've got some Berenstain Bears. I've got this Nancy Drew book. Y'all saw me reading this book at school. I actually read this book while y'all were doing y'all silent reading, and it's a super, super awesome book. So I would definitely not mind reading that again. It's obviously a pretty big book, so I would just go chapter by chapter, kind of like I did this book. And we could just do it this kind of the same way we did this one, where I would probably just upload each chapter, and make it into a playlist. I've got a bunch of different books here, so I would love to get y'all's input on what you would like me to read first. I got a couple Flat Stanleys, a couple A to Z mystery books. So I'm trying to avoid Dork Diaries and Captain Underpants, the graphic novels, because you kind of have to be able to see the pictures in order for those books to make sense. So it's not that I don't love those books, but anything that is like comic book style or graphic novel is going to be a little bit more difficult for me to read out loud. So we're going for any other books other than graphic novels that you have suggestions about, that you know that I have, or that you can see here. Please feel free to comment down below, and I'm happy to read it for you. I can schedule it so that it can happen at the beginning part of summer. Last thing, I know that we have been away from each other for so long, and I miss you guys so much. I seriously love you guys with all my heart. And I really hope that y'all keep watching these through the summer, even if you have to turn your Chromebooks in and you have to watch it on your phone, your mom's phone, or whatever. I really want for y'all to, because they're not going to be long read alouds, for y'all to just listen, even if it's just while you're eating breakfast. You know, you wake up each morning, you can listen to me do a quick read aloud, and then you can go play, even if that's your summer schedule. That way it'll keep reading in the back of your mind. And that way by the time you get to 5th grade, if we do the reading challenge again, y'all will have read so many books already going into 5th grade. I'm really setting y'all up to be the best 5th graders in the whole, I mean, it might be the best 5th graders MPE's ever seen. So be sure that you are still keeping up even after we get done with Woods Runner, because I really am going to be reading some really great books this summer. And I would love for you guys to start your mornings with me, even if your morning starts at 8 or some of y'all's mornings might start at noon. Whenever you wake up, it'd be awesome if you would just keep watching, so that way I had a way to keep interacting with you guys. Y'all can comment, I'll comment back, but I want to still be able to keep in touch with each and every one of you this summer, even though I'm not going to be your teacher because you're going to technically be 5th graders. But y'all will totally be ready for 5th grade. I 100% believe in you. And be sure that just because Woods Runner ends and just because 4th grade ends doesn't mean that your love of reading has to end too. So I'm going to keep reading to y'all for as long as you're willing to keep listening. And I promise I will keep taking suggestions. And I will always love y'all. So we got a little deep and emotional there towards the end, but that's okay. We won't do that every video. I just needed y'all to know I love you and that I hope you keep watching throughout the summer because there's a lot more to come all the way, even after we get all the way through with this. That is the end of my soapbox. So y'all get to work on reading, on opening those questions and getting those done. And if you need anything, as always, just message me on GoGuardian or have your parent call or text me. I love you. Bye.